I've just been having a lot of crazy dreams.
Do you love me? Help me. You said you wanted to help me! Where are you?
Nature is Satan's church.
The evil you talk about is an obsession.
No!
Okay, hi guys and welcome to the show. Today we're going to be taking a look at cinema. I haven't done a cultural video for a while, so I thought long overdue. Now usually what I do is I have a selection of films from Netflix that are currently screening. I try to pick something from all around the world, so I'll have quite an eclectic mix usually. But today I thought I'd focus just on one director, one of my favourite directors of all time, Lars Von Trier. He's of course from Copenhagen. He was behind the very influential, famous Dogma 95. He's made countless very controversial, he's a bit of a provocateur. You know, he's always courting controversy and there's always something really interesting to talk about. Recently I rewatched his latest Nymphomaniac film, which is in two parts. Netflix just put it online, not only the theatrical release but the director's cut, which has I think an extra hour or two in it, which I must admit I really did enjoy. Now I must stress that all of the film actually, I mean, well with a name like Nymphomaniac and Antichrist, the films we're going to talk about today obviously are not for the faint-hearted. If you are easily offended, these are very explicit films, deal with very adult subjects in quite a raw and straightforward way sometimes. Antichrist has some scenes that are quite violent and quite disturbing, but for me I found all his films hugely rewarding because they talk about things that we all can relate to. Today we're going to look at his Depression trilogy. What triggered this off was I read a very excellent article. Let me turn the brightness down. I read this very excellent article from the Chicago Literati. This is an ultimate source for literature based in Chicago. And also another article about Lars Von Trier and this is the Japanese Times. This is, I presume, their equivalent of the New York Times, but obviously the Japanese Times. So anyway, we'll talk about the Chicago Literati article first, and I'll link these down in the description. I'll just read you a little bit. It stars Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg, and this came out in 2009. This is a Danish experimental horror film, written directed by Lars Von Trier, of course, and it was said to have been made during one of his own kind of periods of depression. It won Best Actress at the Cannes 2009 Film Festival, understandably so. I mean, Charlotte Gainsbourg is phenomenal in this really powerful, intense performance. The first of these films, Antichrist 2009, story revolves around a couple simply known as he and she, played respectively by Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg, who try and cope with the death of their young son. She in particular falls into a dark depression that, as the film progresses, evolves into violent reactions that involve sadomasochism-like behaviour. She blames herself for the death of her son. He is a therapist and he witnesses his wife's ever-growing grief and decides to take her to a place known as Eden by means of exposure to therapy. Eden is a place in the woods where she spent past summers with her son and working on a thesis on genocide. It is at that point where she spirals into chaos as well as the land around her. So there's almost this kind of, nature is almost a character in the story, you know, so it's very important that the land around them becomes an antagonistic force of misery and violence. This shows by a constant bombardment of acorns hitting on their roof at night. He wakes up with swollen ticks on his arms and a trio of animals symbolizing the three beggars. These animals include the deer with the dead fawn hanging out of its wound, the self-disemboweling fox, and the crow, of course. So a lot of symbolism, a lot of meanings and different ways of interpreting it. It's really, this is a prime example of cinema that makes you think. I was haunted by it for days. I mean, the first time I saw it, it just completely blew me away. You know, it really is a force of nature in itself. Moving on to the second film, which is Melancholia, which is the second part of the so-called Depression trilogy. Now this stars Kirsten Dunst and Charlotte Gainsbourg. I think she's in all. Yeah, she's in all of them. There's a really big supporting cast. There's Kiefer Sutherland. There's a whole load of fantastic actors. I forget, but it's about the absolute certainty that we are all going to die, and it deals with this kind of realization of our own impending doom. I must admit, you really do get the sense of dread and tension, and it does actually make you think about your own life. It's funny, it's a bit like an intellectual disaster movie, so to speak. What I loved about this film in particular was the use of the opening overture from Tristan and Isolde, which was so cleverly used. And it almost kind of, it kind of highlighted the macabre romanticism of nature, and how kind of so violent and uncaring it can be, but so beautiful and kind of hypocritical at the same time. I mean, look, this film is so deep, and so many ways to analyze it, and so many things to interpret. And this again is what I adore about his films. You're just left for days, almost after the film, you're just left for days kind of wondering and thinking and thinking about your own mortality, and it's fantastic. So anyway, I'll just read you another little bit. Broken into two segments, the film focuses on Justine, and then secondly on Claire. Beginning on the night of Justine's wedding, so there's a kind of cheeky, I think a cheeky kind of reference to Fechten, you know, which is a very important cult film from the Dogma '95 era. So anyway, beginning on the night of Justine's wedding, throughout the entire evening she finds it difficult to even slightly enjoy the evening as a rogue planet inches closer to the Earth. Both sisters react differently to the forthcoming end. Justine accepts her fate, and Claire is trying to run from it. As this rogue planet inches ever closer, we see Justine in awe of its approach and accepting the notion that the Earth is evil and we don't need to grieve for it. That's an actual quote from the script. Claire, on the other hand, towards the second half of the film, tries to mask this impending doom. As Justine awaits for the collision, Claire attempts to take her son and try to escape it. There is a sense of vagueness in the notion of depression that is never actually addressed, whereas the Antichrist takes a philosophical approach into looking at depression. Melancholia depends on the viewer, us, putting the pieces together. Justine in particular deals with these extreme episodic bouts of depression, which include moments of distancing herself from others, or the inability to get up and walk. To someone unaware of what depression may be like, it takes a little more to analyse and understand what Justine may be thinking, or to understand why she acts in the way she does. The plot is straightforward because you already know everybody's going to die, but as the viewer, we want to know how they will face their death, and that's what becomes fascinating, and that's what you're kind of left with pondering after the film. You know, how do we deal with our own inevitable demise, our own inescapable mortality? You never see films like this. This is why I want to talk about them, and why I want to share them. They make us think to a deeper level. They are real masterpieces of art to look at, and it's not just, you know, some kind of empty entertainment that is disposable. It makes you kind of really appreciate what we have in a strange kind of way. It's funny, it's the Depression trilogy, but I came away feeling quite kind of thankful in a way, which I guess is more down to my own generally more positive vibe. You might have a completely polar opposite reaction. I would love to hear about that. So if you reacted differently to what I did, please comment down below in the comments. Anyway, let's go on to the last film, which was Nymphomaniac Volume 1 and 2. Now this is probably the most controversial out of the three because it deals with sex addiction. Charlotte Gainsbourg is absolutely amazing. I mean, you've got to... I don't know how she didn't get an Oscar for this. I mean, just she gave everything to these roles, especially in this one. I mean, the sex scenes are incredibly explicit. In some ways, it's almost more explicit than pornography, because whereas pornography is just designed to arouse you, this kind of arouses your intellect, and therefore you're stimulated in a different kind of way. I must admit, by the end of it, it is very long. Both films together, I think, both Nymphomaniac 1 and 2 together exceed 3 or 4 hours in length. By the end of it, you're bombarded with so much kind of sexual imagery that you almost feel kind of asexual by the end of it. You're almost not interested. Which is curious. I found the discussion on sex very, very interesting, very mature. There are parts where Lars Von Trier very cleverly plays with the suspension of belief. There is one section where the camera kind of pans out and passes a mirror, and you catch the reflection of the mirror, and I think I could almost see Lars Von Trier himself behind the camera, and almost kind of quickly goes back into the action of the scene, almost to... He plays with this. There's so much to interpret in this film. I think it's probably the most... It's the one that I found most intriguing, because there's just so many things to talk about. There's so many things it addresses. Let me just tell you about the plot. So, okay, so Nymphomaniac is a 2013 two-part drama art film written and directed by Lars Von Trier. The film stars Charlotte Gainsbourg, Stellan Skarsgård, Stacey Martin, Shia LaBeouf, Christian Slater, Connie Nielsen, Jamie Bell, Uma Thurman, and William Dafoe. So a really impressive cast. The film was originally supposed to be one complete entry, but because of the 4-hour length, Von Trier made the decision to split the project into 2 separate films, and it's fascinating. And at no point did I was looking at the time, or I was just completely engrossed. There were moments where Lars was very deliberately playing with the suspension of belief, and there were moments that it did feel like a bit of like a stage play, and in other moments it felt very much like a kind of 70s exploitation movie with very explicit sex scenes. The way they managed to superimpose actual porn stars' bodies onto actors like Shia LaBeouf and is seamlessly done. You cannot tell. So there's no break in. You're not looking at it and go, oh well, that's fake or that's fake. It just flows very well, and at no point do you. It is very explicit, so you are taken aback a bit. You're not expecting to see Charlotte Gainsbourg engage in such situations with her co-stars. Anyway, so the sex scenes are in a sense realistic and very explicit. So the actual discussion in the intellectual analysis, and it's quite a sophisticated film, and I must admit I really enjoyed it. If you can just get over the fact that it's dealing with a controversial subject and just look at it, unbiasedly, I found it very rewarding. Let's just see what the article here said. Okay, the finale of the trilogy comes with a film that is broken into 2 parts, Nymphomaniac. Together, both films tell a retelling of the main character Jo's life, played by Charlotte Gainsbourg, and how she suffers with sex addiction. Presently within the film, Jo tells her life story to Seligman, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who finds Jo beaten up in an alleyway behind the house, blah blah, we talked about it. The retelling of her life and her addiction starts with her as a young child, up to the present time. Jo tells all the nitty-gritty details of her sexual escapades, which include all the partners she had been involved with and all the forms of sexual activities, such as a stint involving BDSM, and the lives she believes that she has ruined through her sexual addiction. This is a really important part. It not only deals with her immediate kind of suffering, but also the kind of after effects of her addiction, and how it's affected, you know, married couples, people that she's, you know, married husbands that she's had affairs with, and so on. There's a fantastic small role by Uma Thurman that she's only in the film for, must have been on screen for 10 minutes, but it was one of the most gut-wrenching, fascinating, sad, beautiful, well-acted, amazing scenes. It was hilarious and sad and thought-provoking and difficult to watch, yet absolutely mesmerizing. Uma Thurman, I think it was in part 1. There is a kind of dark humor there. It's very bizarre, but anyway, look out for that scene. It will stick with you forever. Right, so depression is not presented at face value here. It is more an essence of the plot. Jo is a person who has lived a life using people for her own satisfaction. A person who has been instrumental in hurting others' relationships, such as sleeping with married men. These actions cause the viewer to question her morals, but allow us to better understand her and bring about her heartache as we watch her descend further into this lifestyle. Jo uses Seligman as a means to vent all of this, and in sharing her story she tries to see if what she has done has been true evil, that there is no way to change any of it, and that her life has been a matter of black and white. Both Antichrist and Melancholia take both an existential approach to dealing with depression, whereas Nymphomaniac leans in more heavily towards the realm of realism. Nature is also used as symbolic imagery in Nymphomaniac, just like it was used in Antichrist. So, you know, again we have this recurring theme of nature being this kind of ambivalent, kind of, not, well, they reference it as evil, but a force that does not care. It's just doing its job in a sense, and we as humans are kind of suffering under you know, dealing with it. A really broad trilogy that really delves into a dark subject that, you know, even if you're not interested in it, it's worthy to watch, because there's so much to learn from. There's so much kind of commentary on our own society, on our own existence, futile battle with nature, and it's fantastic. This is quite an interesting paragraph. I'll end this video with. Watching all of these lives entrapped in these horrible illnesses, watching these people fight and erode before my eyes was heartbreaking. Yet there is something interesting in all three films, part of the Depression trilogy, that can give one hope. Because art is meant for us to find pieces in ourselves in, great art is meant for us to question, so that we may discover more about the world at large. For me, I watched as all these characters tried to confront their darkness. These three films not only represent my love for art, film and story, but also my lifelong journey in trying to understand the faceless monster I drag along with me. I connected these films to these characters, and that's the goal of great art. In the end, I think part of Von Trier's Depression trilogy is that while not everybody may suffer from depression, those of us who do not suffer alone. So quite an interesting end to the article then. Anyway guys, I will post the link down below, please check it out. Of course, Antichrist, Melancholia and Nymphomaniac, both 1 and 2, the director's cut and the theatrical release, are all on Netflix right now, so I urge you to check them out. If you're not familiar with Lars Von Trier, you're missing out, you really are. I find his films hugely rewarding, and it is vitally important that we as aspiring gentlemen stay abreast of all these great cultural works that we have access to. It's so rewarding and really helps to define us, and there's no greater form of art than cinema, and to me Lars Von Trier is right at the top, is really at the pinnacle of this art form. It comprises so many different art forms that I respect, such as beautiful cinematography, stunning music, amazing acting, and the art of filmmaking itself. So really, it's the fastest way to access high-end intellectual culture. It's the fastest way of getting it into here. So if you've been meaning to watch this film, don't put it off any longer. Okay guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Please put your comments down below. I'd really like to hear what you thought of the films. What are your favourite Lars Von Trier films? What did you like out of the trilogy? What did you hate out of the trilogy? Or maybe Lars Von Trier is not your thing. Who do you prefer? I'd really like to hear that. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you very, very much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay guys, ciao.
As a young girl, I discovered I was a nymphomaniac. Well, that's nothing to smile about.
If you have wings, why not fly?
If I asked you to take my virginity, would that be a problem?
I don't see a problem.
What if it's nasty? Then you just think of a bag of chocolate sweeties.
I wanted to be picked up, put down, again and again. I wanted to be treated like a thing.
May I tell you something?
Sure.
You're my first one.
Really? Love you.
And was starting to have trouble remembering who was who.
I've thought about you often. Have you thought of me?
Wow.
Would it be all right if I show the children the whoring bed?
You can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs.
Wow.
It was rebellious.
What did you rebel against?
Love.
I've never met a bad human being.
Well, you have now.
You think you know everything about sex? I can't feel anything. I can't feel anything. I can't feel anything.
Perhaps the only difference between me and other people was that I've always demanded more from the sunset. More spectacular colors when the sun hit the horizon. That's perhaps my only sin.